Hello, everyone. My name is Ismail Shahtakhtinski, and I'm the principal immigration attorney at I.S. law firm. Yesterday, as many of you, I listened to Donald Trump's inauguration speech and then watched him sign executive orders, multiple executive orders, including executive orders related to immigration. And he also made lots of statements related to immigration. So I will try to interpret what it means, what those executive orders mean, and what his statements mean, and what he cannot do, and what I think, based on my experience and his first presidency, what I suspect will happen with those executive orders. Will they proceed forward, or will the courts consider and strike and reverse those orders? So, number one, Trump declared national emergency at the US Mexico border. What it means is that now, if under the national emergency powers, the president can allocate uh, significant funding to protect the border, and he can designate U.S. troops to protect the border, and he can possibly suspend entire asylum processing through the border in general. Notably, Trump tried to do that in 2019 when he declared national emergency to fund the border wall. It did not work. The courts disagreed, and he was not allowed to do so. Eventually, he used national emergency under Title 42 for due to the pandemic, and the borders were sealed. But even then, there was some processing of asylum cases, especially those cases where the claimants, the entrants through the U.S.-Mexico border, claimed that they would be tortured in their countries. So it remains to be seen what the courts will do. But I suspect there will be, not suspect, I'm sure there will be lots of litigation in federal courts, and how justified is his national emergency this time remains to be seen. His claim is that there are too many undocumented immigrants entering the United States through the U.S.-Mexico border. Some of them may be terrorists or criminals, and that's a national emergency. So it remains to be seen. But de facto asylum processing is currently stopped, paused, I would say, because the president doesn't have the power to unilaterally stop asylum processing. So one way or another, there will be some kind of asylum processing. That's my belief, that based on my experience. Um, the CBP One app is currently closed. I believe it will remain closed because this was something that the Biden administration came up with. So what Biden did, he basically sealed the border with his executive order last year, and the CBP One app was already being rolled for the last several years, where everyone who wanted to apply for asylum would basically register on the app and then be processed in, so to speak, orderly manner to apply for asylum, to be allowed to enter the United States and apply for asylum. So what Trump is saying, that with the Remain in Mexico policy, you've probably heard of that also. That was one of his executive orders, reinstatement of the Remain in Mexico policy, that the asylum processing will not be stopped. It's currently paused until the Remain in Mexico policy is fully reinstated. What it will mean is that it's going to be very similar to CBP1. In fact, Remain in Mexico might be more effective in terms of quicker processing of asylum cases. I'm not supportive of it, but the CBP1 process up until now, it took about 6 to 8 months for many of the individuals who are now in Mexico waiting for their appointments. Some of them have been waiting for, at the very least, what I know is 6 months or more. Some of them were being processed through the lottery system and were faster, but generally it was a very long time. Now, if the Remain of Mexico policy is reinstated, then if it works effectively, then those applicants can actually not lose that time, but have maybe processed through immigration court in terms of having their master hearing. I don't know exactly whether there will be remote hearings, probably, but that's what basically he's trying to reinstate. The second in my list, the second executive order related to immigration was termination of birthright citizenship. What it means is that Currently, anyone who is born in the United States is automatically U.S. citizen unless they're born to foreign diplomats under certain types of visas, but we're not going to go there. So typically, everyone normally is a U.S. citizen by virtue of being born in the United States, and that is in the U.S. Constitution. So his executive order of termination of the birthright citizenship is not effective already. I mean, it doesn't even have to be currently challenged in court because the citizenship that comes from the Constitution. The only way he can change this is going to be through the constitutional amendment. So, I mean, he declared it, but I take it back. So there will be a lawsuit filed. I mean, probably a bunch of those filed, and this will be litigated, but it's very highly unlikely. Um, and I would say probably impossible that the president unilaterally can terminate the birthright citizenship. So again, that's in the U.S. Constitution, and that will require constitutional amendment. Just so that if someone doesn't know, to amend the U.S. Constitution, it has to be the national referendum, or 2/3 of the both chambers have to vote for the U.S. Constitution amendment, to my recollection from the constitutional law class in law school. So, a reinstatement of remaining in Mexico. I explained that the CBP-1 is closed. CBP-1 app is no longer working, and I don't expect that it will be working again. Maybe the Trump administration will come up with something similar, but it's not going to work through CBP-1 app. So designation of cartels, drug cartels in in Mexico as terrorist organizations, that allows the president to, the executive branch of the U.S. government, the president and his administration, to target those drug cartels. How does that relate to immigration? Is that those drug cartels are significantly involved in smuggling immigrants through the U.S. border. They are, for significant amounts of money, they are, so to speak, helping to bring the immigrants into the United States through the open gaps at the border. They're bringing them not only into the United States, but they're also bringing them to Mexico, to northern Mexico, from a bunch of countries in Latin America. So there is a lot of cartel involvement in this southern border immigration process. So designation of drug cartels as terrorist organizations will allow the U.S. government to target and much wider, broader power to target those cartels. And most importantly, a lot of you have heard the words of mass deportation during his re-election campaign, and then even after election, he kept talking about mass deportation up until his inauguration. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he never used the word mass deportation during his inauguration speech or post-inauguration speech. What he talked about is the word mass deportation. The term mass deportation has been changed to deportation of undocumented, of immigrants who committed crimes, of the criminals. So what it means is that basically what Biden administration has been doing, and previously Obama administration has been doing. So on the Biden administration and Obama administration, they prioritized the deportation proceedings for those undocumented aliens, immigrants who do not have status in the United States, who are undocumented, and who have criminal history of committed crimes. That was called prioritization of deportation, of removal proceedings. So under this, to prioritize a deportation of those undocumented immigrants who committed crimes, the Biden administration also, came up with this notion of prosecutorial discretion. Well, the Biden administration didn't come up. It was Obama administration who came up with the prosecutorial discretion being widely used. I mean, even they didn't come up. It existed all along, the notion of prosecutorial discretion, but they used that to prioritize the resources to deport those undocumented immigrants who have committed serious crimes. So what basically Trump is now saying, and his executive, well, I don't think he has an executive order related to that yet. But what they're now saying, and I don't think he needs an executive order. I mean, deportation of undocumented immigrants is already within the power of the executive branch. So it doesn't need a separate order for that. But it's not a mass deportation. So I want to dispel the fears. Um, Number one, there are not enough resources to mass deport. And that's exactly why the Obama administration and Biden administration decided to process this prosecutorial discretion where they are selectively dismissing cases in removal proceedings because there are not enough resources, not enough immigration judges, not enough deportation officers, not enough space in detention centers to basically process and deport any immigrant who ran out of status or violated their status one way or another without committing crimes. And many don't know this, but Obama, under President Obama, uh, there were highest number of deportations in the U.S. history through among any presidents. So with this process, President Obama's administration deported more immigrants than anyone else, and focusing on specifically those who committed crimes in the United States, serious crimes in the United States, not just petty offenses. Now, will Trump differentiate between the petty offenses and serious crimes? That remains to be seen. Probably not. And that's what they tried to do during his first presidency. Well, in fact, during his first presidency, they did not differentiate between criminal immigrants or just undocumented immigrants. So they were putting on deportation proceedings everyone, even someone who just applied for a immigration benefit for some kind of, for a green card or change of status and got denied. The instruction was that they would be placed in removal proceedings. But of course, there are not enough resources to do that. There are not enough, officers in the, attorneys in the immigration customs enforcement to even issue those notices to appear in immigration court. So at that time, during his first presidency, we have seen many applicants for asylum whose cases have been, planned to be referred to immigration court, but they did not issue the notice to appear for a year or more. After this, they were even being detained at the border. So it actually slowed down the processing of undocumented immigrants during his first presidency. So that's why mass deportation is just a statement. It's not possible. I mean, it's possible with violation of constitutional rights, where a bunch of permanent residents and even U.S. citizens could be rounded up together with immigrants, undocumented immigrants, and be deported. But that would be a constitutional crisis in the United States. So we're not there yet. At least, and hopefully we're not going to get there, and at least that's not what Trump and his surroundings are saying. So, but the mass deportation is not possible. So, again, his statement about mass deportation, the terminology he uses has been changed now. Deportation of undocumented immigrants who committed crimes. Um, and so, with that being said, most notably, what asylum applicants at the southern border are going to feel in the nearest future, and I mean even now, is the closure of CBP-1 app. So those who have been patiently waiting to be processed through through a CBP-1 app, and waiting for months, unfortunately, they will be punished for their patience and trying to follow the law. And what will happen now, I suspect, is that those drug cartels will actually become more active. And all along during the CBP-1 app processing under Biden administration, these drug cartels were being hurt because they couldn't do much, because they get a lot of money from those asylum applicants at the border by taking them illegally through the border to cross the border. They're just, and a lot of them have been trying to convince those applicants through CBP-1 process to cross the border illegally. Of course, there was this transit ban under Biden administration, which basically said that you wouldn't, almost like you wouldn't be eligible for asylum if you cross the border illegally versus waiting through CBP-1 app. Of course, there are nuances. You could still overcome that presumption of ineligibility by proving that you were not able or you couldn't have applied safely for asylum in any of the countries through which you passed, which is the reason why the name is called transit ban. So, but the bottom line is, uh, in terms of inability to apply for asylum through U.S.-Mexico border, I think this is, again, it's just my personal opinion. I think it's temporary. And there will be a lot of court litigation in federal courts in relation to these executive orders. And some of them will be stricken by the courts, meaning reversed or prohibited by the courts. So they will not be enacted, or, they will be suspended. And in terms of national emergency at the US-Mexico border, considering that the Supreme Court is now predominantly conservative, I suspect compared to his first attempt in 2019, this one may go through to allow more funding and more, to allow, um, uh, designation of US troops to protect the border. So I suspect that that can go through. Termination of birthright citizenship, I don't think that will go forward. I don't see a possibility of this going forward, considering that this is a constitution, this requires a constitutional amendment, and considering all the priorities, and just generally, the division between ultra conservatives who would like to suspend that birthright citizenship versus, moderate conservatives or independents or Democrats. I don't think it's possible to make that amendment to terminate birthright citizenship. But of course, it's something that Trump checked off his list of things that he promised to do. Reinstatement of remain in Mexico. Again, I think if it works effectively, that would be better even than CBP-1, considering how long the CBP-1 wait times are. So you would actually gain, have your asylum case processed faster if by remaining in Mexico, so you wouldn't lose that time. But of course, it remains to be seen. I mean, there are lots of challenges of how will that be implemented. Will that be remote hearings only, or will they be allowed to enter the United States for the purpose of their hearing? And if they do, how do they get escorted? That it requires lots of more resources. So I guess a lot of details. Devils are in the details as to how Trump's administration will try to implement this. So thank you so much for listening. I will talk more, obviously, about all these developments, Trump's statements, declarations, and executive orders. And as there will be more developments about the lawsuits filed against those executive orders and the court decisions. So I'll keep you informed. We'll post more videos. Please keep following. Please subscribe and hit like. Thank you very much.